Morning, everybody. It's Friday again. I can't believe it. And one thing I've noticed that I have a British heritage, so I laugh at myself sometimes because the weather seems to come up for me often as a conversation topic. And that's because with a British heritage, that's how people introduce themselves in a brief conversation. Oh, nice weather we're having. So it's springtime here, and it's been rainy. And I've been noticing in my body how I respond to winter and summer, and how that affects my energetics and my creative output, and that I go into a rest and digest state in winter with lower energy, just as the weather is darker, the yin of the year as opposed to the yang of summer, where the light is intense and everybody feels energetic and things are growing and emerging. So this dynamic of yin and yang is present in just about all 26 episodes of Dr. Jen Pierich and my podcast called radicalemergence.org. It's where you can find it. And we've been recording episode 6, which is in this yin-yang theme, because these dipolar dynamics affect us on every single level of our body. And we're not even cognizant of that. And yet it affects our relationship with the world. And the world affects our internal yin-yang dynamic, which is why I mentioned the weather. That's actually a whole topic called eco-somatics, which is beautiful. The way that your body or your soma, your internal perception of your living being, is directly affected by your context. Not only that, and that's why we have 26 episodes to discuss this, your internal being affects what you are seeing. Now, how does that work? It's on the level of the nervous system itself. There's a beautiful binary built into the human body that we're not even aware of. The nervous system is constantly fluctuating, for example, between sympathetic and parasympathetic. Fight and flight is sympathetic. Rest and digest is parasympathetic. Now, depending on our context and how we're activated, we have a fluctuation within our body, and different chemicals are released to do that function. Cortisol and adrenaline if we're in fight and flight, and other rest and digest hormones and chemicals if we're in parasympathetic. And we need both of those states. We need to have a balance. Rest and digest is when we heal, when we're relaxed. And this corresponds with different brain waves. So not many people that I've come across, in fact, I don't know any. I'd love the audience here to alert me if there are people out there noticing the correlations between our fluctuating nervous system and our brainwave activity. So when we're in fight and flight, our brainwave activity gets faster, and we call that beta brainwaves. It's when we plan, we goal, we start solving problems, we're in solution-oriented mode. Very helpful, but we can't get stuck there. As we relax, we come into alpha brainwaves, which are more, they're slower, they're deeper. Maybe we're gardening, maybe we're painting with our kids, maybe we're reading bedtime stories, maybe If you're a man, maybe you're fishing. Maybe you're out raking leaves. So there's a biosomatic response to the context. Are we in fight and flight? Are we safe? Are we relaxed? This affects our brainwaves. When we're even more relaxed, we come into theta brainwaves, which are long and slow and profoundly imaginative. So as a creativity coach, I help people understand that your brain state actually determines your creative output. And you can dive deep in there and come up with all sorts of inspirations. It's almost like being on a mushroom trip, if you can get that state down. All sorts of patterns and colors and images and words are available to you. Wisdom arrives without effort, from which you can make creative objects. So you need a certain level of safety for that and relaxation. So that is often as you go to sleep or as you wake up. So you can harvest those times of day for your maximum inspiration. And that is one of my deliberate practices, putting that time aside to receive what's coming to me in that state of theta, long, slow brainwaves. And of course, if you go deeper, then you're in delta, which is sleep. And even in delta, the imaginal realm, the dream state is magnificent. So the brain keeps producing and creating and images and colors and stories, and they just happen. We're not even conscious when we're asleep. So this is interesting. If we're safe and cozy and relaxed, we enter creative states. If we're in fight and flight, beta brainwaves, we're on the external focus, we're problem solving, we're probably in traffic, we're making the list of to-do things. So just being aware that yin and yang, which is rest and digest or fight and flight at the nervous system level, affects our brain states and affects whether we're being creative or in problem-solving mode. We need a level of safety to get into creative relaxation. That's why some people say, oh, you've got time to paint? That's a leisure activity. What a spoiled brat you are. It's because you have to have a certain container where your needs are provided for so you can get into that state. So many cultures that are not at war that have time to produce culture. So it's related to how safe we feel and if we feel provisioned and resourced. So these things are important, and I address this because in episode 6, Jen and I talk about probably the most important mechanism for transformation in the whole series. It's the foundation. It's what produces paradox and it's the one that sums up all these somatic layers that are going on that create our experience. We call it traditionally the object-subject split. So we'll unpack that in episode 6. We look through several lenses: spiritual lens, neurological lens, which is the right brain, left brain hemisphere. We look at the arts, how that impacts our productivity. So for example, are we using the fictional voice, writing fiction? Then we're looking at life from the inside, from the interior, using the I pronoun. Are we writing nonfiction? Then we're looking at life using it or its, objective, subjective, split. And men and women have typically, but not always, typically specialized in one of those focuses. The external gaze, and the internal gaze, the objectivity, the subjectivity. And this is really critical to our understanding, because on many levels, it's also political. It's about power. And I'm exploring this further in some containers that I'm in. I've just been writing pieces about how I think this is actually the basis for misogyny as well. That slowly over time, the left brain becomes highly valued because it keeps us safe. It's activated. It looks at life in little parts. It cuts up life and it problem solves and it fixes and it keeps the tribe safe. And the masculine has had to look at the exterior world, always scanning the horizon for danger, to provide or to protect. So men tend to look at the outside world objectively. Women have been evolved slowly over time to stay home, take care of the domestic situation, nurture the children, build community, and their gaze is comfortably internal. Not always. Men and women can explore either of these parts of themselves, and actually development is to do both. So over time in our episodes, Jen and I will discuss how this impacts us developmentally. So the subjective has been devalued by the objective over time. Possibly because that's how we've stayed safe. We always revert to fight and flight if we're in danger. Fight and flight needs the left brain. It needs to look at things and solve problems. Doesn't have the relaxation of the wide gaze, which is the meditational gaze, which is what we practice on the cushion when we meditate. To move fluidly, to drop out of beta brainwaves, busy mind that keeps us safe, into this more relaxed theta brainwave that is probably only accomplished and available when we feel fairly safe, which is the yin, the feminine. So I'm in some other containers reframing misogyny as this hierarchy of what I'd call left brain chauvinism that devalues the feminine, the right brain, the arts, the internal, the subjective experience. Men don't hate us. They love us. But we irritate and annoy them, and we're troublesome, and we have feelings. And their focused gaze finds that annoying because they have to come out of the small, narrow focus that was needed to keep us safe into this wider perspective. That takes work, takes practice, takes presence, takes meditative skills, takes the ability to witness both the mind and the body in action, and to accept them and feel comfortable with them. So men have tended to split off feelings, the yin, not because they hate us, but because that's what was needed on the savannah. So in the contemporary world, women have had to develop that left brain, become much more rational, much more logical, and use that in the workplace to problem solve and have the list. Traditionally, that was the men's work, but now women are doing that very successfully. Actually, to the cost of our bodies, sadly, because we're constantly in beta and fight and flight. That's not healthy for anybody, but especially for bodies without testosterone. Testosterone protects us a little bit from fight and flight. So, and men, we're calling you to experience a bit more of your subjectivity. How does it feel to be in your body right now? It's definitely not safe to feel your feelings. So you should be good at that. Feeling unsafe is what you're specialized in, how to manage that. But it's limited your focus. So now we're looking at how all genders can explore both the objective and the subjective. And how we're going to grow from that. It's not easy. So look out for episode 6. I'm very excited by this episode. It's core to the entire podcast. And slowly over time, we're going to expand the subjective-objective split, as it's called in adult ed. It's called awareness of awareness in spiritual practice. It's called left brain, right brain in neurology. So depending on what discipline you're using the language from, it's called a couple of different things, and we go into that. It's all the same thing. So I hope you look out for that on Sunday. And as Jen and I have continuously said over this podcast, it's best to start from the beginning if you haven't been keeping current, because we develop the complexity of this conversation and we move from the big picture to the smaller, finer points of this, and how to be, as we call it, eco-somatically aware of yin and yang, as well as politically aware of how these power dynamics are working out. So look out for that on Sunday, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Maybe think about how you're relating to the weather right now, whether you're in the southern hemisphere and it's fall. How does that affect your sleep? How does that affect your alertness, your mood? Or if you're in the northern hemisphere, we're coming back into our yang period. The equinox, where we've just been, is the balance of yin and yang. And our somas are always affected by the ecology of our context. So look out for that and have a really good weekend, and I'll speak to you again next week. Take care.